Alright, what is going on today, guys? I wanted to talk about the what ifs of the Crown Vics. You know, what if they did this? What if they did that? You know, what if they had changed this over the years? You know, whatever. Just the what ifs. Because, you know, a lot of cars that we all know and love, you know, they've changed things and done things, and it's like, you know, that was a what if moment, you know? So I kind of wanted to, like the Cherokee, for example, you know, what if they brought back the Cherokee? Well, they brought back the Cherokee and, you know, look what happened to it. So we'll get into the what ifs of the Crown Vic. Now, for the most part, I'd say, in my opinion, they did everything right with these cars. For the most part, there were things that were problematic, kind of dumb designs, you know, yada yada, whatever. But I'd say 85 to 90% of what these cars are, they're pretty good, and they got most things right. But, you know, nothing is perfect, and some things could have been changed. So, you know, we'll start with the motor. You know, what if they put different motors in these? You know, what motors would they have put in? Now, the 4.6 2-valve that's in these cars, and they all have them, they're really good motors, they're really reliable. Couple problems, you know, here and there. Look up common problems. The intake manifolds leak on them. They spit spark plugs. That's not for every year, but they, you know, they change from, you know, year to year. They have different problems, but for the most part, the 4.6 2-valves are pretty stout, pretty reliable. You know, so what would be an option for motors that I could put in here? At the time, you know, this is the Mustang motor. At the time, the Mustang also had a 6-cylinder. So, you know, what if they put a 6-cylinder in these cars? And they kept them around longer? You know, what if you know, this car, because they stopped making the 2011. You know, around that time, Ford was doing a lot of, like, turbocharging the EcoBoost. I think EcoBoost started around, like, 08, something like that. So, you know, what if this car had a turbo EcoBoost in it, like the Ford Tauruses have now? Actually, they don't make the Taurus anymore, but when, you know, the Tauruses had, that's, you know, in the Ford Explorer. You know, what if it had a twin turbo V6 or a turbo V6? You know, what if it had a different V8? If it had a, you know, 5.0 Coyote motor? You know, like, it would really change the car. I mean, a new motor in this car would, I mean, if you put a 5.0 Coyote motor in here, I mean, there are people doing it. You know, it takes heavily modification, but there are people doing it. And these cars are animals. I mean, people are smoking the tires. I mean, they are lighting it up. These cars are super fun to drive. I mean, Cletus McFarland, he's got a GT500 swapped one that he calls the neighbor. I mean, that thing's out of control. That thing's crazy. You know, so there's an option right there. What if they put the GT500 motor in these? I mean, obviously that would never happen, but, you know, what if they did? What if that was actually an option you could get? You know, like a special performance option. The only motor that was different in these cars was the Marauder that had the 4-valve Cobra motor, and those cars are really nice cars. You know, they're really nice. You know, for what else? You know, what if for the motors? I'm trying to think what else. Like, what other? You had the 5.4, which in the pickup trucks, a lot of people do swap in the 5.4. You get more power. Those are pretty good motors too. You know, I wish that actually was an option, because I'd say they're just as reliable as a 4.6, and they have more power. So that would have been a nice option to have. Now for the trans, you know, what if this car came with a manual transmission? Now, the odds of it being in a Police Interceptor model would be pretty slim. I highly doubt you'd ever see a manual cop car. I don't think that really ever existed since, like, 1970. I mean, I'm sure in the 60s they had manual cop cars, but I don't really think that was really anything past the 60s or 70s. So the odds of a manual trans being in this car is slim to none. But, you know, what if we're talking about civilian models, you know, like the LX Sport? You know, what if it had a manual trans? You know, it had like a, what are the trans that the Mustang uses? The T5, I think it's a T5 trans, the Tremor or something. I forget what it is, the Tremec. You know, what if this car had a manual trans? You know, imagine this car with you know, a turbo V8 or a supercharged V8. That's another thing I forgot. What if it had a supercharger? You know, what if it had a supercharged V8 with a manual trans, rear-wheel drive, and 4 doors? I mean, this would be a crazy car driving. I mean, it's fun to drive now, but let's be honest, guys. If you really think about it, it's kind of boring. I mean, it's just a regular 4-speed automatic and a little V6, I mean, a little V8 that makes 250 horsepower. And I have fun driving it. So I can even imagine having a bigger motor and like a manual trans or something. You know, what if they put more gears in the trans? It had an 8-speed. How much this car would be, it would be phenomenal. This car would drive phenomenally. I mean, it'd be like a brand new car in my opinion. I honestly think that is like one of the worst things about Crown Vics is the trans. Not necessarily the reliability, because I don't think they're as unreliable as people make them seem. But just for the fact that it's a 4-speed, I mean, they're just a dog, you know. The transes are just, that's really, it is what it is. The trans, it is what it is. They're just dogs. Imagine having like a dual clutch in this thing, or, you know, even like just a regular torque converter 8-speed or something. This car would have been a night and day difference in performance and just overall just dailying the car. You know, another what if. What if this car was a coupe? It never was a 4-door. You know, what if they had a coupe version of this? I know the old, not Crown Vics, I believe the town cars, the Lincoln Town cars, the old ones, they did have a coupe. I think they stopped making those in like the 70s. Like the 70s or early 80s or something. I do know that they had a Lincoln Town car that was a coupe. But imagine these cars, you know, being in a coupe. Personally, I really wouldn't have sold that well. My phone is blowing up. Who's blowing my phone up? Okay, I'm getting all these random text messages. Okay. But, you know, if this car was a coupe, definitely make it a little bit sportier, but it's really kind of hard to make a big boat of a car like this sporty. I mean, yeah, sure, like Cadillac DeVille's or, you know, sportier per se. They do look nicer than the 4-door versions, but you know, I don't know. I'd have to see a 2-door Crown Vic to kind of really see if it would be cool or not. I mean, I guess I would like it. I like the Crown Vics. You wouldn't see it as a police interceptor, obviously. You know, you would never see that. Because they need to have 4 doors to haul people around. So they would definitely be like the LX Sport. I'm sure a lot of these what ifs would be really only pertaining to like the civilian Crown Vic with like the sport package or something. I can't ever see the police adapting anything really besides maybe the trans and motor. And even then, they would probably just have something that's better on fuel, not necessarily faster. So what else? What if? I could say convertible, but I have seen some convertible Crown Vics, and they don't look good, guys. That's a what if that I don't ever want to see. So we're gonna just keep that one out. But I have seen these in convertibles. You know, what if this was a convertible? It looked like trash. So we already had the answer to that one. We're gonna skip past that one. And I think one of the last ones that we could do for the Crown Vic. Actually, there's another one. I have 2. You know, what if this car was, you know, all-wheel drive? What if we changed the drivetrain? Or even what if this car was front-wheel drive? That would be absolutely terrible. But imagine this car all-wheel drive. Now, me personally, I am a fan of rear-wheel drive. All the vehicles I have are all rear-wheel drive. The only front-wheel drive car I ever had was my 2 Oldsmobiles. And, I mean, front-wheel drive cars really don't handle that well. I've never owned an all-wheel drive vehicle. I guess you could say my Jeep kind of is, because it does have full-wheel drive. So it's, you know, it's not true all-wheel drive, but I know what it's like to be in an all-wheel drive car. Just not on the street. I know out in the woods and stuff. But, you know, imagine this car was all-wheel drive. You know, just picture what this car would be now. Let's say they still made this car and they put a bigger motor in it. They had a, you know, twin-turbo V6, 8-speed trans, and all-wheel drive. You know, just imagine what this car would be like. Or even just imagine the new Coyote 5.0 in it. You know, same thing with like an 8-speed, or even the 10-speed transmission they have now with all-wheel drive. I mean, just imagine how crazy this car would be. I'm sure these cars would not necessarily be a lot popular, but definitely be a cooler option. You know, if these were known as like grandpa cars, not necessarily the police interceptors, but the Grand Marquis and Crown Vics and stuff. They were like grandpa's cars, you know, so, you know, they never really got a whole ton of respect. You know, they're respected by people that drive them and know them, and, you know, are cops and stuff like that. You get respect in that way. But when it comes to like coolness level and you know, like the car culture, car clubs and stuff, you know, these are they're kind of left out. You know what I mean? That is what it is. What it is. The Mustang is definitely a lot sportier than this car will ever be. So, you know, what if this car was all-wheel drive? You know, it'd be crazy. Personally, like I said, I'd want the rear-wheel drive, but it would definitely be a unique experience in this car. And the last thing that kind of ties it all together is, what if they still made Crown Vics? You know, what would it be like now? My guess is the way that Ford's going and a lot of other car companies are going, I personally think this car probably would have been turned into a crossover. They definitely would have bulked it up. They would have taken the weight out. It wouldn't be body on frame, and it wouldn't be rear-wheel drive. They may have kept the V8 in it. I doubt it. They probably would have put a 6-cylinder in it. But they definitely would have bulked up its size. Not necessarily the size of the vehicle, but the size of like the interior. You know, they would have probably almost made it into like a baby SUV, like a crossover. That's my assumption what they would have done with the Crown Vic if they never discontinued it. And you know, what if the Crown Vic did turn into a crossover? Would this be the last generation of the best Crown Vic, or would they continue to make it a car that everyone loves? You know, like the Mustang. People still love Mustangs. You know, like what happened? What if this car, they kept everything right, and it turned into, you know, to almost like a Charger. You know, the Chargers are pretty cool cars. 4 doors, rear-wheel drive, V8. It's almost what this car was. It's only this is a lot slower, and it's body on frame, and it's more reliable, more durable. You know, the things that really matter, like the core, like what you want in a car, this is way better. But if you're looking just for something fun, you know, weekend toy, this car has absolutely nothing on it compared to like a Dodge Charger. I mean, that's just how it is, you know. They're not built for something like that. But, you know, if Ford made this car now, you know, what would it be? You know, how would it turn out? I don't know. That's something that I thought about. I'm like, what if they did this and what if they did that? And then I was like, well, let me make a video and let me get other people's opinions, because I'm sure some of you guys have some good opinions here. But that's pretty much it. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.